A Japanese businessman took his wife to the United States for a vacation. Under the golden California sunshine, the couple strolled leisurely along a bustling street. But in the blink of an eye, gunshots rang out. The wife collapsed in a pool of blood. The husband sobbed in front of the media cameras and even wrote a letter to the President of the United States demanding justice. Back in Japan, the entire nation mourned for him, calling him the tragic husband. But 3 years later, that same man stood in the courtroom, not as a victim, but as a defendant. And that was only the beginning of a case that would span 27 years, cross 2 continents, and involve the deaths of at least 3 women. Our story takes place in Los Angeles, the city of angels, known for glamorous Hollywood and vibrant beaches. Yet in 1981, this city witnessed a mysterious crime whose truth remains unresolved to this day. The case later earned the nickname the Japanese O.J. Simpson case, more precisely known as the Kazuyoshi Miura incident. For a bit of context, O.J. Simpson was a former American football star and actor who stood trial for murder in the 1990s. His case shook the world because of its complexity and controversy. If you're interested, you can look it up. On Wednesday morning, November 18, 1981, at 11:05 a.m., Japanese businessman Kazuyoshi Miura and his wife, Kazumi Miura, were strolling along Fremont Street. This is a busy street in the Little Tokyo Commercial District near downtown and Chinatown, a popular area for sightseeing and shopping. Back in Japan, Kazuyoshi owned a fairly successful import-export company, earning nearly $1.3 million per year. Because of his business, he frequently traveled between Los Angeles and Japan. This trip, however, was not only for work, it was also meant to be a romantic getaway with his wife. Around noon, after walking for quite some time and growing tired, the couple decided to look for lunch and headed toward their parking area. At that very moment, an old dark blue car suddenly pulled up right in front of them. 2 young men leaned out and said something to them. Because of the language barrier, Kazumi looked confused, not understanding what was happening. No one expected that one of the men would suddenly pull out a gun and open fire. Before the Miuras could even react, $1,200 in cash was taken from them. The 2 robbers then quickly fled the scene. Police arrived almost immediately to begin the investigation. Kazuyoshi was shot in the left leg, but his wife's injuries were far more severe. She suffered serious brain trauma, which caused severe vision loss and motor dysfunction. She was placed in a vegetative state in the hospital and kept alive by life support machines. Kazuyoshi told the police that the shooter was a Latino man with long hair and sunglasses. However, because everything happened so suddenly, he was unable to see the license plate of their vehicle. Police questioned nearby residents, but all they could say was that they heard gunshots. No one noticed the car's appearance or its license plate. It is important to note that Fremont Street was known as a high-risk area with frequent robberies and thefts. As a result, the investigation faced countless obstacles and progressed very slowly. After the attack, Kazuyoshi repeatedly called for stricter control of street violence in the United States. Even while at his wife's hospital bedside, he wrote letters to President Ronald Reagan and the Governor of California, urging them to take stronger measures to combat violent crime. In an interview with the American media, Kazuyoshi choked back tears and said, "Is it really worth committing such a horrible act for just $1,000? So many young people from Japan come to the United States carrying dreams and passion. I truly hope tragedies like this will never happen to them." 1 month after the attack, Kazuyoshi gradually recovered and returned to Japan, while his wife, Kazumi, remained hospitalized in Los Angeles for continued treatment. When the news reached Japan, the media covered it intensively under the headline, "The Los Angeles Shooting," and Kazuyoshi was widely referred to as the tragic husband. As a victim, he demanded that the U.S. government compensate him $200,000, an enormous sum by 1980s standards. Eventually, the United States sent a special military helicopter to repatriate Kazumi back to Japan. In video footage captured by reporters, she can be seen being wheeled out on a stretcher as the helicopter landed. Kazuyoshi immediately rushed forward, desperately shielding his wife's face from the cameras. At the time, the scene deeply moved the public and stirred widespread sympathy. But tragedy struck once again. 10 months after returning to Japan, Kazumi passed away due to the severity of her injuries. After her death, media coverage of the case gradually faded. Meanwhile, the American police investigation never truly stopped. With the 1984 Los Angeles Olympics approaching, the U.S. government was eager to prevent any similar incidents that could damage the country's international image. Authorities were repeatedly urged to accelerate the investigation. Even so, due to the lack of solid leads, the case made little meaningful progress. More than 2 years passed. Just as the public was beginning to forget the incident, an unexpected newspaper investigation brought the case back into the spotlight and sent it in a completely unforeseen direction. In early 1984, from January to March, the well-known Japanese magazine Shukan Bunshun, a publication famous for investigative journalism and occasional controversy, released 7 consecutive articles under the headline, "The Suspicious Bullet." These articles sent shockwaves through the public. They alleged that Kazuyoshi himself may have been the mastermind behind the Los Angeles shooting, with the motive of murdering his wife to collect life insurance. According to the reports, before the attack, Kazuyoshi had purchased a life insurance policy for his wife worth 80 million Japanese yen, equivalent to over $500,000 at today's exchange rate. Not long before the shooting, he increased the coverage by an additional 75 million yen, bringing the total to 155 million yen, or roughly $1 million by today's value. Even at the time, this was considered a staggering sum, an almost unimaginable fortune. After the incident, Kazuyoshi not only collected the full 155 million yen insurance payout, but also withdrew 5 million yen from Kazumi's personal bank account, sold off all of her belongings, and took control of her assets as his own. After Kazumi's death, Kazuyoshi showed no visible signs of grief. On the contrary, he quickly remarried and moved to London with his new wife, where he rented a luxury apartment. The apartment reportedly had 3 bedrooms, a living room, a dining area, and a kitchen, a layout commonly associated with spacious, well-equipped Japanese-style residences. The monthly rent was 900,000 Japanese yen, equivalent in the report to $6,000, and it also included an outdoor area of approximately 355 square feet and a private garage. When these reports were published, the case once again triggered a second wave of massive media coverage. But this time, Kazuyoshi was no longer known as the tragic husband. He was now labeled the suspicious husband. From then on, the case also became widely known as the Los Angeles case. The media began relentlessly digging into Kazuyoshi's private life, from his criminal record to his romantic relationships, portraying him as a womanizer and a reckless spender. Later, Miura himself claimed that he had become the central figure in approximately 25,000 news articles and appeared on 15 different television programs every single day. One program even went so far as to broadcast detailed reports about what he ate for dinner. There were even rumors suggesting that he was the illegitimate child of a famous actress. Kazuyoshi stated that, as an ordinary person, having his private life so brutally exposed to the public was something completely unprecedented. At the time, the case dominated newspaper front pages almost daily. Both his company and his current wife were heavily affected. His company's sales plummeted so severely that it was eventually forced to shut down. After that, he opened a new store in Tokyo. Media outlets and customers flooded in, crowding around to take photos with him and shake his hand. The scene became so chaotic that the location was even described as a new tourist attraction in Tokyo. Over time, the situation spiraled completely out of control. Some magazines even published explicit and highly private photographs of Kazuyoshi. He immediately filed a lawsuit against the publishing company, demanding 10 million Japanese yen in damages. Ultimately, the Tokyo District Court ruled that the magazine must pay him 1 million Japanese yen in compensation. However, from another perspective, it was precisely this overwhelming public pressure that finally pushed the case toward a major turning point. 2 months after Shukan Bunshin published its exposé, a 24-year-old woman named Chizuko Mizo confessed to the newspaper Sankei Shimbun that she had once taken part in a serious crime. According to Mizo's testimony, she met Kazuyoshi at a party, and the two quickly developed a romantic relationship. More than 2 months before the Los Angeles shooting, Kazuyoshi allegedly used 15 million Japanese yen and a promise of marriage to persuade Mizo to murder Kazumi. On that day, the Miura couple was staying at the new Otani Hotel in Los Angeles. That evening, Kazumi was alone in the room while Kazuyoshi was attending a meeting in the hotel lobby. Before leaving, he specifically told her that he had arranged for a tailor to come and take her measurements. While Kazumi was trying on clothes in the room, an Asian tailor suddenly rushed in and attacked her. As a result, Kazumi suffered severe head injuries and had to be hospitalized. Fortunately, her injuries were not fatal at the time. That so-called tailor was later revealed to be Mizo, Kazuyoshi's lover. Because there were no witnesses and no physical evidence, the investigation once again reached a dead end. It was only after Mizo voluntarily confessed that the details of the case slowly began to surface. Mizo also stated that Kazuyoshi's true goal was to commit insurance fraud. In response to these accusations, Kazuyoshi defended himself by claiming that the entire incident was merely the result of a love rivalry between two women. He insisted that Mizo, as his lover, had become jealous of Kazumi's status and went to the hotel on her own. A confrontation broke out between the two women, and Kazumi was accidentally injured during the struggle. Not long after that, Mizo voluntarily turned herself in to the authorities. From that point forward, the Japanese police officially intervened in the case. Their investigation revealed that Kazuyoshi had a long history of prior criminal offenses. Kazuyoshi was born into a wealthy family. His father was a civil engineer, and his mother operated a home-based restaurant business. During his childhood, the family moved 3 times but always remained within the Kanto region. As a result, Kazuyoshi frequently interacted with his aunt, Etsuko Mizuno, who was a famous Japanese actress and film producer. Later, she was also forced to withdraw from the entertainment industry due to her connection to the case. In a television talk show, Kazuyoshi once revealed that when he was a child, he visited his aunt during New Year's celebrations and saw many famous actors gathering at her home. He received New Year's gifts worth 300,000 to 400,000 Japanese yen, which was an enormous sum at the time. It was also through his aunt's introduction that Kazuyoshi established a connection with a legendary Showa-era film star, Yujiro Ishihara. Kazuyoshi was even cast to play Ishihara's childhood version in a movie. However, perhaps realizing that the entertainment industry was not truly for him, he eventually chose not to pursue an acting career. During his brief exposure to show business, Kazuyoshi's attitude toward money gradually became distorted. After entering middle school, he frequently stole large amounts of cash from home and ran away. On one occasion, after arguing with a teacher, he jumped out of a classroom window and fled with 100,000 Japanese yen, making his way to Osaka. During this period, he was even admitted to a psychiatric hospital at one point. After graduating from middle school, Kazuyoshi applied for admission to the Youth Technical School of the Japan Self-Defense Forces, a special educational institution that combined pre-military training with technical and vocational instruction, primarily for middle school graduates. Tuition was fully covered, and students received a monthly stipend. Unfortunately, he failed the entrance examination. He later found a job as a maintenance technician, responsible for inspecting and repairing machinery. Through this work, he gradually came to understand the importance of education and enrolled at Yokohama General High School. However, once at school, his old bad habits resurfaced. He was arrested for robbery, theft, and illegal possession of weapons. He later escaped from the Yokohama Juvenile Detention Center, claiming he had already bought tickets to a movie and a concert by the band The Animals. Eventually, Kazuyoshi was expelled from the high school. In 1966, at the age of 19, he was arrested for arson and sentenced to 7 years in prison at the Wakasa Juvenile Correctional Facility. Despite his extensive criminal history, Kazuyoshi was still popular with women thanks to his height, about 5 feet 11 inches, and his handsome appearance. Over his lifetime, he went through 5 marriages. 2 years before the Los Angeles incident, He married 26-year-old Kazumi, marking his third marriage. 1 year later, the couple had a child together. Kazumi had previously been a somewhat well-known model and dreamed of entering the entertainment industry. But after getting married, she devoted herself entirely to family life and became a full-time housewife. She believed that their family of 3 would live a happy life, never imagining that what awaited her would be a series of recurring nightmares. 4 years after the hotel attack, Japanese police arrested both Kazuyoshi and Mizo on charges of attempted murder and conspiracy to commit murder. At Mizo's lawyer's request, the two were tried separately at the Tokyo District Court. In the final ruling, the court found both of them guilty of attempted murder. Mizo was sentenced to 2 years and 6 months in prison, with a 3-year suspended sentence, while Kazuyoshi was sentenced to 6 years in prison. This trial focused primarily on the hotel attack. Meanwhile, the investigation into the street shooting in Los Angeles continued at a slow pace, with no significant breakthroughs. During this time, Kazumi's father offered a $10,000 USD reward for information leading to the capture of the criminals. 7 years after the original shooting, Los Angeles authorities officially issued an arrest warrant for Kazuyoshi on charges of murder and aiding and abetting. 5 months later, Japanese police arrested Kazuyoshi along with a 56-year-old acquaintance and charged both men with murder. This acquaintance was identified as Otake Minoku, the owner of the parking lot where the shooting occurred and a known gun enthusiast. The case was once again brought before the Tokyo District Court. Kazuyoshi hired Junichiro Hoshino, a well-known defense attorney, to represent him. Hoshino was widely known as the acquittal specialist because of his record of securing not guilty verdicts in numerous high-profile cases. In court, the police first outlined several suspicious points in the shooting case. First, according to the investigation, there were 4 witnesses at the scene. All of them mentioned a white car in the parking lot at the time of the incident. Kazuyoshi was questioned multiple times after the crime, yet he never once mentioned the white vehicle. His detailed descriptions of the attacker's appearance and actions were also inconsistent, and he refused to take a polygraph test. As a result, the police suspected that he may have deliberately fabricated his testimony. Second, an acquaintance named Otake Minoku had rented a white car on the day of the incident, but he failed to accurately disclose the name of the rental company, suggesting an attempt to conceal this fact. He was also in possession of a weapon capable of carrying out the crime. In addition, the prosecution pointed out that this case did not fit the typical pattern of a robbery. In most robberies, the perpetrator threatens the victim, demands property, leaves quickly, and avoids injuring the victim in order to escape a harsher sentence. In this case, however, the attacker carried out a precise attack first and then stole the property, indicating a more deliberate and premeditated act. More importantly, ballistic analysis and witness statements both indicated that the shots were fired at close range. This directly contradicted Kazuyoshi's claim that the robber had fired the weapon from inside a car through the window. The defense then presented its rebuttal, arguing that witnesses stated the white car at the scene did not have a roof antenna, while the car Minoku had rented did. Furthermore, Minoku had an alibi and could not have collaborated with Kazuyoshi in committing the crime. The defense also presented calculations based on the physical evidence showing that the attacker remained at the scene for no more than 20 seconds, which was a significant discrepancy from the prosecution's estimate of 20 minutes. They further pointed out that all 4 witnesses stated they had only glanced at the scene occasionally while working and did not observe it continuously. Therefore, their testimonies could not fully describe the entire sequence of events. In addition, the defense demanded the disclosure of several witness statements and criminal records, but the prosecution initially refused. The judge later summoned the prosecutor to court and ultimately ordered the records to be disclosed. This action caused the judge to lose trust in the prosecution. The defense asserted that Kazuyoshi's company was operating very successfully and that he had a high income. Therefore, he had no motive to poison and kill Kazumi for insurance money. Kazuyoshi's current wife also testified in court. She stated that she had lived with him for many years and understood him well. She once saw over 200 love letters exchanged between her husband and his former wife, Kazumi. Their deep affection moved her, and even made her feel slightly jealous. She firmly believed that her husband could never have harmed Kazumi. In the end, the court acquitted Minoku. However, he was sentenced to 1 year and 6 months in prison for violating weapons control laws. Afterward, the prosecution continued to pursue charges against Kazuyoshi, accusing him of being an accomplice with an unidentified third party. It is worth noting that under Japanese law, accomplice liability is not treated as an independent criminal offense. In the United States, once multiple individuals reach an agreement to commit a crime, even if they have not yet carried it out, they can still be convicted. In Japan, however, a crime is only constituted once concrete actions begin. This legal difference significantly increased the difficulty of securing a conviction against Kazuyoshi. The case then went through a prolonged series of trials. The prosecution also gathered additional evidence, including Kazuyoshi's phone records and bank transfer records. Finally, 13 years after the shooting, the court convicted Kazuyoshi of murder and sentenced him to life imprisonment. After the verdict, Kazuyoshi refused to accept the ruling and filed an appeal. 4 years later, the Tokyo High Court ruled that the evidence was insufficient, overturned the guilty verdict, and declared Kazuyoshi not guilty. The prosecution then filed another appeal. In 2001, at the age of 54, Kazuyoshi completed his sentence related to a separate hotel assault case and was released from prison. At that point, 20 years had passed since the original shooting. 2 years later, the Supreme Court of Japan upheld the acquittal, officially confirming Kazuyoshi's not guilty verdict in the shooting case. When the verdict was announced, it triggered widespread public outrage across Japan. Some people commented, "In Japan, 99% of criminal cases end in guilty verdicts. Only about 1 in 1,000 cases results in acquittal. Could Kazuyoshi really be that lucky one?" The day after the Supreme Court issued its ruling, Kazuyoshi held a press conference. He declared, "I firmly believe that I am innocent. All these years may sound long, but to me, they passed in the blink of an eye. My emotions are mixed, indescribable." After his release from prison, Kazuyoshi published a book titled A Guide to Winning Your Own Lawsuit Without a Lawyer, sharing his legal experiences. During more than 15 years of incarceration, he had taught himself the law. He also filed lawsuits against media outlets that had reported negatively on him, accusing them of defamation and invasion of privacy. He reportedly filed nearly 500 lawsuits, claimed to have won 80% of them, and received approximately 100 million yen in compensation. Following this case, Japanese police began covering suspects' heads with clothing to protect their human rights. Media outlets also started blurring suspects' faces in their reports. Although Kazuyoshi had regained his freedom and was able to live off compensation and book royalties, he still struggled to rid himself of bad habits. Just 2 months after his acquittal, he was caught stealing magazines at a bookstore in Minato Ward, Tokyo. 4 years later, he was arrested again for shoplifting at a convenience store in Kanagawa Prefecture and was fined 300,000 yen. At first, it seemed that Kazuyoshi would live a relatively peaceful life. At worst, committing only petty theft. But unexpectedly, a dramatic turn of events soon followed. In February 2008, 26 years after the shooting, Kazuyoshi traveled to Saipan for vacation. The moment he stepped off the plane, he was immediately arrested by police on charges of conspiracy to commit murder and being an accomplice. It turned out that despite being separated by thousands of miles, U.S. authorities had continued to closely monitor the case. Some speculated that Kazuyoshi chose the United States as the location for his crime because of the widespread presence of firearms, believing that the chances of being investigated would be lower. This deeply angered U.S. law enforcement. Afterward, they placed him under constant surveillance, including monitoring the content of his personal blog. In a blog post from the previous year, Kazuyoshi revealed his travel plans. "Recently, I went to Saipan and enjoyed a relaxing 6-day, 5-night stay. I plan to return there with friends for another 3 to 4 days this September." However, what he did not realize was that although Saipan is located in the northern Mariana Islands in the Western Pacific, it is a U.S. territory. There is a mutual legal assistance and extradition agreement between Saipan and the U.S. mainland. Moreover, the state of California has no statute of limitations for murder cases. This means that no matter how much time has passed, he could still be prosecuted. After learning of Kazuyoshi's travel plans, the Los Angeles Police Department immediately sent his identifying information to Saipan police and customs authorities, requesting that he be arrested as soon as he entered the country. Following Kazuyoshi's arrest, the Supreme Court of the Northern Mariana Islands held a hearing and planned to extradite him to Los Angeles. His attorney argued that this action violated the principle of double jeopardy, meaning that a person cannot be prosecuted or tried again for a crime that has already received a final and legally binding verdict. He filed a writ of habeas corpus, a court order requiring that a detainee be brought before a judge to determine whether the detention is lawful in an attempt to block the extradition. Ultimately, the judge ruled that the murder charge tried in Japan and the accomplice charge in the United States involved different legal elements and therefore did not violate the principle of double jeopardy. In other words, the United States still had the right to prosecute Kazuyoshi for conspiracy and accomplice liability. The court also denied his habeas corpus petition. 8 months after his arrest, in the early hours of the morning, Kazuyoshi was extradited to Los Angeles. A court hearing at the Los Angeles Superior Court was scheduled to take place 4 days later. There, he retained a well-known American defense attorney, Mark Geragos, a prominent U.S. criminal lawyer who frequently represents public figures in high-profile and complex cases. Geragos had previously represented Michael Jackson, among many other notable clients. However, what no one expected was that at 9:45 p.m. that same evening, 61-year-old Kazuyoshi was found dead inside the detention facility. He was immediately transported to a hospital, but doctors were unable to save him. Coincidentally, this was the same hospital to which Kazumi had been taken after the original shooting. The Los Angeles Police Department stated that Kazuyoshi had been held in solitary confinement, with guards conducting checks every 30 minutes. Just 10 minutes before he was discovered, officers had completed a routine patrol and observed nothing unusual. No suicide note was found. The Japanese consulate in Los Angeles reported that at 11 a.m. that same day, a consul had visited Kazuyoshi. At that time, he stated that he was in good health and showed no signs of abnormal behavior. Kazuyoshi's attorney once suspected that he had been murdered, after a forensic pathologist pointed out that there was deep tissue damage on his back, indicating that he may have been attacked. The hematoma in his throat could also have been caused by external force. Coincidentally, on that very day, the surveillance cameras were undergoing maintenance. Only Kazuyoshi's cell had no video recording. There were also reports claiming that he had left behind a message in a special way, writing the Japanese characters for innocent on the wall. However, in the end, the official U.S. investigation ruled out homicide. This so-called Japanese version of the O.J. Simpson case spanned 27 years and shocked both Japan and the United States. Ultimately, it came to an end with Kazuyoshi's death. Notably, the original report published by Shukan Bunshun also hinted at another case connected to him. In May 1979, 2.5 years before the Los Angeles shooting, the body of an unidentified Asian woman was discovered in Lakeview Terrace, located in the northeastern San Fernando Valley. The area was extremely remote, consisting almost entirely of empty land and desolate hills. No personal belongings were found near the body. Police suspected that it was a homicide. In the United States, unidentified male victims are commonly referred to as John Doe, while unidentified female victims are called Jane Doe. As a result, this case became known as Jane Doe number 88. 5 years later, after Shukan Bunshun published a series of investigative reports, a woman contacted the Los Angeles Police Department and the Asian Crime Task Force. She reported that her younger sister, Shirashi Chizuko, had been missing for 5 years. Before her disappearance, Shirashi had been romantically involved with Kazuyoshi. Shortly afterward, the LAPD received dental X-ray records. Based on these, they confirmed that Jane Doe number 88 was in fact Shirashi Chizuko, who had been missing for many years. Shirashi had originally been married to a wealthy Japanese businessman, but their relationship had become distant. 2 years before her disappearance, she met Kazuyoshi and became his lover. At that time, Kazuyoshi had not yet divorced his second wife. Kazuyoshi repeatedly encouraged Shirashi to divorce her husband. In 1978, at the age of 34, Shirashi finally went through with the divorce. According to the investigation, she was last seen on March 29th when she boarded a flight from Tokyo to Los Angeles. According to her travel plans, Shirashi was supposed to check into a hotel in Hollywood after landing. However, hotel staff later confirmed that she never arrived and there was no record of her checking in. However, a striking coincidence was that Shirashi was an executive at Kazuyoshi's General Import Company. Moreover, Kazuyoshi and Kazumi checked into the same hotel on the very same day. More than 1 month after Shirashi's disappearance, her ex-husband transferred 4,300,000 yen into her bank account in accordance with their divorce settlement. Within the following month, Kazuyoshi withdrew a total of 4,260,000 yen from Shirashi's account, divided into 42 separate transactions. When questioned by police, Kazuyoshi admitted that he knew Shirashi and claimed that he had even gone to Haneda Airport to see her off when she left Japan. However, immigration records showed that he was actually in Los Angeles at that time. Regarding the 4,260,000 yen that had been withdrawn, Kazuyoshi explained that he had previously lent money to Shirashi and that the amount he withdrew was simply repayment of that loan. A building manager in Minato Ward, Tokyo, told the police that 1 year before Shirashi disappeared, Kazuyoshi had rented an apartment unit there, and the manager frequently saw the two of them entering and leaving together. Later, the manager noticed that Shirashi stopped appearing and asked Kazuyoshi about her whereabouts. Kazuyoshi responded that her parents had fallen ill and that she had returned home to take care of them. A few days later, the manager saw Kazuyoshi throwing away several large bags of trash, far more than usual. Feeling suspicious, he checked the bags and discovered women's clothing and cosmetics inside. Not long after, Kazumi appeared at the apartment, by which time the unit had already changed occupants. More than 3 months after Shirashi's disappearance, Kazuyoshi told the manager that he was about to get married and that the apartment was too small, so he had moved out. In 2009, Kazuyoshi passed away. 6 years later, the Los Angeles Police Department officially concluded that Kazuyoshi was the one who had murdered Shirashi. Investigators believed that he had encouraged Shirashi to divorce her husband in order to seize part of her ex-husband's assets. In response to this conclusion, Kazuyoshi's attorney stated, "It is extremely rare and profoundly inappropriate to publicly accuse someone who has already passed away." The case of Miura Kazuyoshi, a mystery that spanned 27 years across 2 continents, ultimately came to an end with the highly suspicious death of its central figure. With him, all the secrets were buried. Yet one question continues to haunt me. If it were not for the investigative reports published by Shukan Bunshun, would Kazuyoshi have remained forever known to the public simply as a tragic husband? To me, this case is not just the story of a suspect. It is also a powerful lesson about the terrifying influence of the media and about the fragile line between justice and premature judgment. And what do you think? Do you believe Kazuyoshi was truly guilty or merely a victim of public opinion? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for watching all the way to the end. I'll see you again in the next video.